Hello, everybody, and welcome to my Senior to Seniors podcast. That intro music was hardly seniors music, but maybe it is. I don't know. That music's from the 70s, I guess. So there we go. We kind of grew up with this stuff if you're as old as me. So Amanda is with us. Amanda, thank you so much for being here.
It's
You've
my
come.
pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So let me tell you a little bit about Amanda so you have something to know about her at least. She is the ReKinect owner and exercise physiologist, medical exercise specialist. And Amanda specializes in working with people who have chronic low back pain for any number of reasons. And that probably covers most people who are walking upright today, including disc herniation, spinal stenosis, and various spinal surgeries. In addition, she has extensive experience working with those who have undergone total knee, hip, and shoulder replacement. She has over 25 years of experience in post-rehabilitative and medical exercise, and she's pretty passionate about helping people return to the activities they enjoy after surgery or injury and or surgery. She has a master's degree from the University of Virginia in exercise physiology. She's certified with medical exercise specialist from the Medical Exercise Training Institute and a certification in Red Cord active specialist by Red Cord International. And that's kind of my background, and we'll get into that in just a few minutes. So, Amanda, thank you so much for being here. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So, tell us just a little bit more about you that you think everybody needs to know. Tell us a little bit.
Well, let's see. My journey with working with back pain, the reason I became passionate about working with folks who had back pain, started with my own injury,
Right.
which I had my senior year in college when it was a horse-related accident. My horse was tied to the walls of a modular barn. So if you know like what a modular home is, it's put together
Right.
by cranes. So the
Yeah.
walls are like all one piece. Anyway, he panicked, and when he ran backwards to panic, ordinarily, the halter, the thing around his head, would have snapped because it was leather. It should have snapped. Some of the fittings should have snapped. There were panic straps on the ties that were connecting him to the walls. Those should have dislocated. Like there's so many fail safes that failed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he actually pulled the wall down on me. And when he did, once I realized what was happening, I started running from the wall. Now the horse was okay. Everybody always wants to know if the horse was okay. He was fine, scoundrel. But I was running from the wall, and the wall fell and hit me across my shoulders. So I landed face down, and I was covered from the shoulder blades down by the wall, and I was unable to get out from under it because even though it was modular, it wasn't cheap. It was a heavy oak wood wall,
Okay.
and it
Hmm.
had cast iron fittings because it was a horse barn. And I remember thinking I was the only person there, so I wondered whether I was going to survive that, like how long I was going to stay there.
Right. Yeah.
And apparently a girl had driven up while I was under the wall. I didn't know it. And so all of a sudden, and this is one of those like superhuman moments you read about,
Yeah.
I felt these strong arms under my shoulders, and she pulled me free of that wall. And I mean, just pulled with like sheer adrenaline. And if you can imagine the weight of a wall that has three stall doors attached to the front of it, and she's just pulling me free of it. We later, my doctor and I, put together the mechanism that hurt me was being pulled, dragged under that really heavy wall. And so I sustained this injury where the ligament, the attachment from my pelvis bone on the left to my backbone, to my spine, basically was torn. Like it was completely sprained. You can call it a
Hmm.
grade 3 sprain. Anyway, it was badly damaged. I got lucky. Nothing was broken. I had no nerve damage. I mean, things could have been so much worse.
Right.
Uh, but at the time, I'm going to tell you my age now. It was 1994,
Okay.
1990. Yes. And the doctor in the small town where I was in school, this wasn't when I was at UVA, it was it was my undergraduate, basically sent me home to sit on the couch and take some ibuprofen and some muscle relaxers. And he said, in a couple of weeks, just go back to normal activity, which for me was teaching aerobics, because we called it aerobics back then, three
Yeah.
days a week, 5 days a week, and riding my horse. And so I did, with no physical therapy. No, nobody told me what to do. I just did exactly what the doctor said. And when you're in your 20s, you sort of bounce like you're still kind of made of rubber bands. So
Yeah.
I kind of got away with that for a couple of years. But once I was in grad school and I was sitting more, because I was sitting in those really long lectures, things started to hurt. And that's when I knew I had a problem. But fortunately, my graduate degree was in exercise physiology. And so I did what any exercise physiologist would do. I decided I was going to fix it with exercise, and I just knew, I had this deep knowing that I could fix this with exercise. I just had to find the right exercise. So I started actually I started working toward a second degree in sports medicine at the time. I was understudying the athletic trainers. I was hanging out in physical therapy offices. I was trying everything I could do to figure out how to heal my back, going to physical therapy myself, completing treatment and feeling really good. And then they would say to me, and this is very standard, and a lot of your listeners may have heard this. Okay, now you've completed physical therapy. Now you need to go back to the gym and strengthen. And man,
Hmm.
I took that so seriously. And I would go back to the gym and I would start strength training again. And in a couple of weeks, I'd wind back up in the doctor's office. And I played this sort of merry-go-round for a while, and I just couldn't figure out what to do. And I finally found a really good osteopathic physician that knew how to get me unstuck. Because what would happen, I'd be strength training and something would start to spasm and I'd get cranked down, and then I couldn't stand up straight for a couple of days, and it was miserable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I kept saying to him when he would work on me, I kept saying to him, what else can I do? I've tried strength training, I've tried yoga, I've tried Pilates, I've tried everything under the sun. I can't figure out what I'm going to do. And he finally sort of squared up on me one day after I'd asked him that for the 100th time. And he said, Amanda, you're the exercise physiologist.
Hmm.
Maybe this is what you're supposed to learn. And I just went, oh, and it sort of felt like somebody hit me with a rock between the eyes. It's like, wake up. Like, don't try to keep accepting what all the standards are out there. You're going to have to do stuff other people aren't doing. And
Hmm.
so that's really what started my journey. And I started just messing around with exercises. But as we talked earlier, right before the podcast started, um, maybe a couple of years into this, I got introduced to red cord, which is all the red ropes hanging behind Jim.
Right behind me.
Uh,
Yep.
Yep, I got introduced to that equipment, and I was introduced to it by my graduate advisor. Even though I was out of graduate school at that point, he knew my passion was back pain. He knew that I was on a crusade to end back pain, that I was really specifically working with people to try to end their back pain, as well as myself. But he called me and he said, I need you to get down here to this lab. We've got these folks here from Norway, and they are doing this crazy stuff with these red ropes. And I think you've got to see this. And I went down there, and within half an hour of watching the changes they were making with some of the UVA athletes that were pretty badly injured. I mean, I remember a
Hmm.
swimmer that couldn't raise her arm above her head, and they started doing a treatment with her on the ropes. And within about 3.5 minutes, it was like 2 sets of an exercise, she could just easily raise her arm up over her head. And we were all just astounded. Like we couldn't believe it. So I just started saying things like, sign me up, I will learn Norwegian, what do I need to do? And so I started training. Ultimately, I started training with them in 2012 for a number of reasons, but I've been working with Red Cord ever since, and it has been a huge help to not only me but so many hundreds of people that have been in my care. It's amazing, and it's taught me so much beyond the ropes. So if you're
Sure.
listening, you're wondering, well, I don't have red ropes, and there's nobody in my town. It's okay. Like, there's so much we can do that I have learned on this journey that you don't need the ropes for. The ropes are
Sure.
amazing,
Yeah.
and we can do stuff beyond it too. So,
Yeah. So I'm
journey.
sure you've had people that come to Virginia to be with you and the red cords is, and talk about the therapy. Is there a usual time period that they need to be introduced, use the red cords until they feel total relief? Or tell me what that process looks like for someone that has no idea of physiology and science.
So, of course, I give you this very unsatisfying answer of it depends, right? Because it depends on the severity of their problem. And it depends on how compliant they are with the exercises. So I
Okay.
always tell people, I can create a change in here, but if you don't do the exercises I assign you, you probably won't get better and things will
Hmm.
go back the way they were because the body loves habit. And so to really make a lasting change, you have to capitalize on the work we do in here. So assuming that I've got somebody who can come in here once a week and they're going to stay on top of their home exercises that I give them that has nothing to do with ropes.
Hmm.
Um, Often we can see full pain resolution in within 1 month, which I know
Wow.
sounds like a long time, but what we're talking about, like waking up and being like, oh, I'm not hurting anymore, which sometimes is like a miracle for folks who have been suffering with this stuff for many years.
Right.
And then usually it takes me 3 to 6 months to get them to the point where they feel completely confident they can manage on their own. And what I mean by that, Jim, is that it can happen that a lot like what happened to me, where you start feeling better and then you go do your thing. And
Yeah.
your thing may be like 18 holes of golf when you haven't been playing for 5 years. Your thing might be that you're going to go completely change the landscaping of your yard in one day. And I've
Hmm.
had the clients do it, and I think most of us have done that where we start feeling better and it's like, I'm just going to do all of it right now.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so setbacks happen. But
Hmm.
what I try to do is I really work with a lot of education. I try to really educate my clients. And the bottom line is what we're trying to do in the 3 to 6 month period is gradually increase the amount of challenge we can put on that body without causing it to go back into pain and dysfunction.
Hmm.
And so it's what the occupational therapist used to call work hardening, right? Like you're literally trying to help the body become more resilient and more durable. And to do that, a lot of what we're doing in month 2 and 3 is strength training.
Right.
And some of it might be on the ropes because honestly, once people get on the ropes, they sort of don't want to get off. And I keep saying, I want you to love them, but I don't want you to become dependent on them
Yeah.
because it's
Sure.
fun.
Yeah.
And it's different, but you don't have to have that. Like once you've gotten the change, you've got to keep moving in ways that challenge your body, but within the new ways you move.
Mm.
Because a
Okay.
lot of back pain is coming from poor movement patterns, what we call faulty movement patterns. And really, the trick behind RedCord is it helps us learn how to move more efficiently and in more pain free ways. Because instead of focusing on the muscles, we're actually focusing on the way the nervous system turns muscles on and off based on movement patterns.
Okay.
So the easiest way to say that, I said this to somebody today and she said, "Oh my gosh, that was so clear. You've got to use that again." And what I said to her was, instead of focusing on the puppet, I'm focusing on the puppeteer.
Okay.
So I'm
Makes
focusing
sense.
on the area that's calling the shots, not the area that's just reporting for duty.
Mm.
And that really is what the change is all about. And it's helping people understand that as they are getting stronger and as they are putting more challenge on their bodies, it's not always about how strong the muscles are. It's about how well your body handles that demand.
Right.
And that's brain and spinal cord.
So, for those of us that don't have the availability of red cords,
Mhm.
you work with a lot of people, even online.
Yes.
And, if people come to you, let's just see if I can share your site for just a second so people can see it. And I encourage people to go here to ReKinect. This is what it looks like. And you're so easy to find on the internet. There, it's just
Good.
ReKinect, and you're going to pull up. I mean, you're going to be there. And so you're able to work with people, even if they're not in your facility. So
Oh,
tell
yeah.
us how does that work? If one of our people watching, listening, go, that sounds so interesting, but I can't afford to fly to Virginia to have
Yeah.
all this done and stay there for a
Right.
month or two. Tell us what that looks like if people work with you online.
So I have two options. I have a limited number of slots where I can do some one-on-one because my schedule remains pretty full with a wait list. But I do offer one-on-one sessions online, and I have several people that take me up on that. I even have a client in Indonesia right now. So it's totally doable to work online. And online sessions are generally about an hour, which is what my in-person sessions are. The big
Hmm.
difference, of course, is that I can't put my hands on you. So
Yeah.
I rely a lot on watching you go through different movement patterns. So I do movement assessment. So I'm looking at how you move, the quality of your movement, finding out where your stiff places are. So where do you not move well? Where do you move too much? Where do you move too little? And then based on what I see and what you tell me, because I do a lot of listening and I hear a lot about this from my clients too, that sometimes their healthcare providers don't listen as much anymore.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how you operate as a healthcare provider without listening, because to me, the client knows the truth. Like nobody knows what's going on in your body better than you do because you live in it. So I'm intently listening for what you have to say about how this started hurting, when it started hurting, how often it hurts, what brings it about, what relieves it. All of those things factor into my ability to kind of pinpoint where the trouble is. And then we go to work. And
Right.
I'll put you through a series of movements to work on improving whatever I see that's restricted, and then work on stabilizing whatever I see that's moving too much.
Mm.
And basically, you wind up with an exercise plan. Ideally, I meet with new clients once a week, at least for those first 4 weeks. And then we start to maybe create a little bit more space in between sessions. Now, for those who don't want to do the one-on-one, because one-on-one is intensive, and maybe there's a budget involved, or maybe there's a time limitation involved, I have an
Yes.
online course as well. And
Okay.
the online course is essentially delivered over about 10 weeks. But because you have access to it for basically the life of the course, you can keep working on it for a year or more, or even, I
Uh-huh.
mean, you could keep working on it forever if you wanted to, because you can
Sure.
always go back and look at the exercises. And part of the online course is that we do weekly Zoom meetings, so that gives clients a chance to ask questions in real time, get me to demo exercises if we need to, get them to show me an exercise and let me troubleshoot, and everybody benefits from those questions and those demos.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really good stuff with the online course too.
Well, telemedicine is, accepted by
Hmm.
many, and it's
Yeah.
just a part of life. This
Mhm.
is like that.
Yeah.
And as you're talking now, before you're talking, as I was planning for meeting with you, and
Mhm.
I took notice of people. I live in a Del Webb community in Texas, which is a 55 plus community of about 400 homes. We
Okay.
have an amenity center where, the people, the members, the people that live here can go to exercise. My wife does it all the time, to swim and do other things. But when I was looking outside of the exercise, just people who are here, looking out my window and seeing people that are going for a walk,
Hmm.
so you can tell, Amanda, you can tell these people are in pain. They aren't right.
Yeah.
And maybe even like for me, they just, well, I guess I'm going to have to live with this. And
Right.
what you're telling me is people really don't necessarily, there are conditions, I'm sure, that you can't help them, but there's help for people that are in pain. Is that
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
There is, and one of the biggest myths that I really want to bust for people is that I am this age, and Jim, I hear it. I hear it from 40s on up. Like it doesn't matter how old you are, but I have heard, well, now that I'm 40, clearly I have to wake up in pain. That's just the way it goes. Now that
Yeah.
I'm 50, now that I'm 60, now that I'm 70, and I have an 85-year-old client who's pretty much pain free most of the time. And I meet with her weekly because she can. I meet
Hmm.
with her online actually weekly because she can. And I've got her getting up and down from the floor and doing all sorts of strength training exercises that, you know, I, I'm amazed at what she can do at 85. And it's
Right.
because she is determined to stay healthy and fit and able. And so she does. And
Yeah.
she's in a 55 plus community as well. But I meet with her online, and so I can honestly say that your age isn't it. That's not the reason. The reason is something else. And I think often it's sort of this drift that we get into with career. A lot of us sit to work, right? Like we've had careers that made us sit more than standing and moving. Even the most active of us, like I run and I cycle and I do all these things. But now that I do more online, guess what? I'm sitting more too, because I
Yeah.
see people online. So I'm sitting more than I ever have. And I think what happens is we forget that as we age, we do have to manage our bodies a little differently than we did when we were in our 20s. And that sounds really simple, but it doesn't mean it's easy, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
so one of the things that I run into is people get really frustrated. They feel like their body is failing them because it doesn't bounce back the way it did in their 20s. And now they're 50, 60, 70 and beyond. And they're like, why is this happening? Oh, I'm just old and I have to
Hmm.
accept it. It's like, no, why don't we learn how to manage the body that you have now? Because the
Right.
body you have now is not the same as it was in your 20s.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
you're giving it different inputs.
Right. Well,
And so that's a lot of what it's about.
and it's like in business, if you're not moving,
Yeah.
you know, you've got to move, whatever it
Yeah.
might be, whether it's your body or whether it's in business, doing what you
Yeah.
need to do in business.
Yeah.
Life is all about successful life is all about movement. And
Yes.
you're helping people, with the movement.
Yep.
Amanda, many seniors I know have been told that strengthening their core
Hmm.
is the best solution for back pain.
Hmm.
And I think you might suggest a different approach. Am I right, or am I not reading it correctly?
You're
And
no, you're mostly right. So the problem is when a well-meaning healthcare provider says you just need to strengthen your core, it's easy to hear that as that's it. Go do some crunches, go do some planks, go get a personal trainer, and you're good to go.
that's me.
And
That would be
yeah, it's
me.
it's
Okay.
okay, fair. But that's the message that I hear a lot, and I get people that walk through my doors and they've been on the other side of that. They've tried all that and they've come back. And one of my favorites is just go do yoga. So here's the thing: is all of those things are good things to do. Strengthening your core is important. Yoga is a wonderful discipline. I practice
Hmm.
some yoga. I believe in it. The problem is if your body isn't ready for the exercises that you're giving it, you're going to hurt. You're going to
Yeah.
hurt. And if you have been not exercising for a period of time, no judgment here, okay? Like there are things I don't do well too. But if
Uh-huh.
you have not been exercising for a period of time and you go back to the gym and you get a gung ho young trainer that doesn't recognize that you haven't been exercising for a while and you're over the age of 30,
Hmm.
you're
Hmm.
probably going to get hurt because they're going
Hmm.
to give you something that your body can't handle, that
Hmm.
your body can't support. And so, what I really try to focus on, my method for resolving back pain is really a method that I encourage all my clients to keep going with long after their back pain is resolved. And that is one, really work on your alignment. Not like we think about posture a lot, but it's not just posture. It's like, how well do you stack up? I mean, everybody kind of knows what a classroom skeleton looks like,
Hmm.
and if you realize that you're starting to hunch over, then we need to do something to start to interrupt that. Now, I don't believe in the whole just pull your shoulders back and stand up taller because for a lot of us, it's more complicated than that. So
Hmm.
please don't hear
Hmm.
that. But
Hmm.
alignment's a big part of it because if your alignment isn't good, if your posture is really poor, then a lot of those core exercises could actually hurt you.
Okay.
Like you could get into a lot of trouble with them. And so it's important that if you know you don't have great posture and you really haven't been doing something for a while and you're nowhere where I can help you, of course, or you don't want to be helped by me, that's totally fine. But at least get evaluated by a physical therapist, and see what you need to where you need to start.
Okay.
So I really believe that, alignment is very, very important. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it might need to be better than it is today. Does that make
Okay.
sense? So,
Yeah,
so
makes
even
total sense.
if you can improve your posture by 5%, it makes a world of difference in how you experience exercise and activity. It's
Well,
amazing. Like even
yeah.
5%,
Hmm.
because the human body is just that adaptable.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is we need to understand where our stiff places are. So most people are stiff in three major places. Most modern people are stiff in three major places. You want to take a guess?
Lower back, neck, and maybe shoulders. Guessing.
Okay, really good guesses. I'm going to go somewhere different,
All right.
but where I go is going to affect everything you just said.
Okay.
Ankles, hips, and upper back, which
Mm,
incorporates your shoulders because you mentioned shoulders. So if you're stiff in your ankles, one or both, you're stiff in one or both hips, and you're stiff in your shoulders, you're not going to walk well. Like, think about that. You
hmm.
can't walk well if you've got stiffness in one or both ankles, which a lot of us do because we sprained an ankle back in whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, one or both hips, maybe because you've had some back pain, maybe because you've had a knee tweak, maybe just because you don't walk, maybe because it's that ankle, right? Like
Hmm.
there are all
Hmm.
kinds of reasons why you might have one hip a little stiffer than the other. And then if your upper back is really stiff from a lot of sitting, because that's computer work, driving, right? Food preparation, all the
Yeah.
stuff we do with our hands out in front of us.
Yeah.
So what those areas do when you're stiff there, you start substituting with too much movement in places like your lower back. So
Yeah.
you go to lift something heavy and you can't get there with your hips, you get there with your back.
Right. Yeah. So
That's
you're
that's what we do.
compensating. We compensate for what we don't have, right?
Exactly. You compensate and you compensate in those vulnerable places like your back. Same thing with your neck. So if you're stiff through your upper back, that means that when you turn your head, you don't get the rotation through the upper back that you should, because when you turn your head, a lot of people don't realize this. When you turn your head, you're supposed to get rotation all the way down, like through mid rib cage area.
Okay.
Like all
Mhm.
those spinal segments should rotate some as you rotate your head. But if you're stiff, then it has to be all neck rotation. And if it's all neck rotation, you're going to over rotate at your neck and you're going to hurt your neck.
Wow. Wow.
So these are the areas that I really try to focus on the most. They're the ones that I focus on the most in assessment. And boy, if I find one or more of them, it's like, all right, we're going to get on this first. We're going to get on getting through those restrictions first and trying to give you some mobility back, because only once we've gotten through those stiff places can then we reestablish control of the lower back. Otherwise, you're just leaning on your stiffness, right?
Okay.
So you can do all this core work and say, gosh, my core is really strong, but in reality, you're just leaning on your stiffness.
Yeah.
So once we get through some of that stiffness, then we can teach you how to use the deepest muscles beneath the ones that do crunches and planks. The ones that do crunches and planks are sort of the outer muscles, and they're not the right support system. We want to get those deeper muscles working again.
Wow.
And so we've got to get those working. So it is, and essentially, it comes back to I want you to strengthen your core. But first, we've got to get these other things working so that you can actually use your core the way you're meant to use it.
Wow. Well, so I totally failed that test.
No,
And
you didn't. You
yeah.
didn't. It was beautiful. And the reason I wanted you to do that was I believe a lot of your listeners were thinking the exact same thing, because
Hmm.
this is what I hear regularly.
Hmm.
And what I try to educate people on is I know you think you know where you're stiff or where you need to move more, but the reality is there are probably other places that if we focus on them first,
Yeah.
these places that you're feeling stiff in, these places where you're experiencing stiffness and pain, are actually going to free up more.
Wow. So one of my headphones just went out. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yep.
So tell me, how does this then affect one of the biggest issues with seniors? And
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's balance. And
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
dangerous. It's
Yep.
dangerous as heck, right? Because,
Yep.
I think, uh, I don't know the statistically, but I know most seniors that end up in a home or somewhere worse than that. It's from a fall. It happens because of a fall. So how does balance fit into your whole therapy that you suggest for people?
Yeah. That's a great question. So, in my mind, the first thing I'm going to do to address balance is get your ankles moving better.
Okay.
That's weird, right? But if you think
Mm-hmm.
about it, if you have really stiff ankles and you start to lean forward, you can't catch yourself with your toes. You
Yeah.
have to reach for something with your hands.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It makes total
But
sense.
if your ankles are working, then you could lean forward and lean backward and catch yourself with your ankles.
Hmm.
And if you miss an ankle, like if you overwhelm it, you lean back too far, you take a step. But see, if you don't have the ankle mobility to feel the ankles try to catch you, you won't take a step and you'll fall.
Wow. That
So
sounds so simple, right?
it's simple, but it isn't necessarily obvious or easy. And so the method that I use where I'm really going after ankles and hips first, what that does is it lays the foundation to train balance. And so balance training is wrapped up in my method just as part of the progression because walking is a series of single leg balances. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that gets our seniors into trouble is if you don't have good ankle mobility and you have stiff hips and you don't have a lot of strength in your hips.
Mm-hmm.
Now, hip strength is a big deal too. So I would put hip strength right up there with core strength.
Hmm.
And most
Okay.
doctors just say core strength, but hip strength is the other important part because your buttocks are what are meant to hold up the weight of your trunk when you're standing and walking. And
Yeah.
most of us think it's our core and our lower backs. It's not. The core and the lower back are meant to sort of mitigate movement, but the buttocks are what are really made to hold up the weight of the trunk. So if you are low on hip strength, and you're stiff in one or both hips, or you're stiff in one or both ankles, then your balance is going to be poor. So a lot of what we do here is we're working to get better mobility through your ankles and hips. Then I start working on more control out of the lower back. So getting those deepest core muscles working, but also control of the pelvis through getting the buttocks muscles working.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
as we start doing that, the progressions naturally go into single leg balance. But by the time we get there, Jim, the individual has already been experiencing how to use those muscles in their hips again
Yeah.
and how to work their ankles. And so when I start giving them challenges on one leg, all I start doing is slowing it down, you know? So it's like they may have a stepping exercise that I ask them to step up and hold and then step back down. And that's a balance exercise.
Sure.
Right. So it's part of the natural progression of working through all those stiff areas and all those areas that don't have a lot of control that are moving
Yeah.
too much.
So, you mentioned that many doctors feel that the core is maybe the most important, but what I found is most doctors don't know a lot about a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
And they'll tell
so,
you that too. A lot of them will I've had plenty of doctors as clients and they just look at me and they're like, we didn't learn this in medical
sure,
school.
yeah, they couldn't.
This was not in medical school.
Yeah,
And so, every time I hear that, or I have a doctor shake her head at me or shake his head at me and go, man, I mean, I don't know how you know this. And it's like, well, you know your specialty,
yeah,
right?
sure.
But it wasn't even like attempted in medical school,
And
which
and, and maybe that's uh, why an osteopath might have a better opportunity to help people. Have you found
yeah,
that?
so the osteopaths, if they have been really schooled in osteopathic manual therapy, which I think they have to have at least one course in it in osteopathic school. There are a lot of osteopaths that are practicing as general practitioners now, or even as specialists, but with an
Yeah.
osteopathic degree, because it's still a medical degree. But if they've been through OMT, which is osteopathic manual therapy, they've had some course in it. I think they have to graduate. Then they at least have an appreciation for how misalignment or restrictions at joints
Hmm.
create what I think of as sort of muscle cascades where muscles get either disengaged fully, like I think of it as like the Wi-Fi won't connect because the nervous
Hmm.
system will,
Okay.
will sort of unplug a muscle and won't
Yeah.
let you connect to it. Or a muscle can become, as we say, facilitated, which means that the nervous system tells that muscle to grip. And I'll bet some of your listeners have had that feeling like, gosh, this muscle feels like it just won't let go. That is a gripping muscle. And it's probably, at the whim of your nervous system. Your nervous system is telling it to grip for some reason. There's a reason, see?
Hmm.
And so a lot of what I'm trying to do is figure out, why are you gripping there? So it's not enough for me to stretch it or send you to a massage therapist to massage it. It's why is it gripping? Let's take the reason away so that you can move better through that. Still might benefit from a massage. I'm all about that. But
Sure.
but the whole point is, we've got to find out why your body's doing what it's doing.
Okay.
And then we can intervene correctly. And I think the osteopaths have a better appreciation for that than a lot of the MDs do, because they just weren't taught that.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
unfortunately, the MDs are taught to like medicate it.
Hmm. And so how have you found that you've been accepted in the medical community? I mean, one of the things that I read was that, people call you a witch when their pain goes away, right? And
Only white magic, never black magic.
yeah, they're only the good stuff.
Uh-huh.
So how do doctors, has that been a journey that at first they go, yeah, but they see their patients actually benefiting and go,
Yeah.
there's something to
Well,
this?
I think so. And I think what I did early on, I think, well, one, I got really lucky because when I was getting my exercise physiology degree, I did a lot of work in cardiology. And even the couple of years after graduate school, my first job was in cardiac research. And so I worked shoulder to shoulder with some really amazing cardiologists. And so I learned not to be intimidated by doctors, which I think there are a lot of people in my space, they're sort of scared of them.
Right.
But honestly, I find them to be just really well-educated, interesting human beings. And, sure, there's some that have egos and that sort of thing, but I have found doctors to be very interested and understanding when I talk to them about my approach. And of course, I've kissed a few frogs. There's some that don't want to talk to me, and they put me in the personal trainer bucket, or they put me in some other bucket. Sometimes I get put in the physical therapy bucket, and I always kick and scream about that because I have plenty of colleagues in physical therapy, and I never want to make any of them think that I think I can do what they can do. Because
Uh-huh.
physical therapists can treat people in the acute side of things. Like they can help you right after injury, right after surgery. They've got tools and skills that I don't have, and I don't even pretend to do what they do,
Hmm.
nor do I want to. So I've really tried very hard to help both physicians and physical therapists and other healthcare practitioners understand that I know where I am in that continuum, and I'm not interested in jumping lanes.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I also have a lot of respect for what they do and where their specialties lie. And then if they're open to the conversation, I'll tell them about what I do. And so what I did early on when I moved to Richmond, because I started out in Charlottesville, but when I moved to Richmond, I really started networking my way around the medical community in Richmond and looking for people who prioritized patient success over everything else. Like, I wanted them to be in it for the patient and not anything else. They also prioritize collaboration. Like, they were looking for people that could help their patients beyond what they could do. They believed in a multidisciplinary approach. So they believe in pulling in other practitioners that have specialties beyond their own. So I was really, talking to people. I'd meet somebody that was very like-minded, and I'd say, who else do you know that I need to meet? And
Okay.
so I worked my way around Richmond, and really was very fortunate to find some amazing practitioners that I have enjoyed surrounding myself with, and I've enjoyed referral relationships with. So I just, I know there are probably some out there that don't want to meet me, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But the ones that I tend to work with, I absolutely adore and respect, and it's been
Yeah.
great. But I
Well,
think the biggest thing was that I wasn't scared of doctors, because I
yeah,
think a lot of people in the fitness space are sort of like they think of them as like untouchable
sure.
people.
And I've been in real estate for 33 years, and there's also that in any profession. I know in real
Yeah,
estate there are people, and I know this because I owned and managed a franchise office and so forth, that think that they can't talk to me,
yep,
that I won't talk to them, and
yep,
you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with.
yes,
And there's you've got to look to the people that you think can help you and help your patients. So,
Yep.
because this is a senior podcast, what advice would you give a senior, not a particular senior, but is there an overall statement you would make on here's something I would suggest? I know you have and have written down here your 5-step program, right? That you go through. You go through assessment, restore, rebuild, and we reintegrate. And so tell us, how would that all fit into somebody that's watching us today?
Um, so I think that probably the best thing to say is, um, if you want me to give sort of overarching advice, my
Yeah.
first advice is do your best to move in a variety of directions
Okay.
every day.
Okay.
Meaning that most of us have our routines, and our
Mm-hmm.
routines are awesome because they keep us from having to overthink and they save us mental energy and all those things. And it's great. And we find comfort in routines. And I would ask your listeners to take a look at that routine and pay attention to what movements you're doing, because most of us in our routines are moving with our arms out in front of us all day. We might be sitting and standing, but we very rarely turn. So
Okay.
turning around, right, which
Mm-hmm.
is,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, it's rude on video, but turning around is almost not happening anymore, because unless you've got an older car, you don't even have to turn your head to back up the car.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I mean, that was sort of the last bastion of turning,
Sure.
And so things like rotation, things like reaching up, as long as your shoulders are healthy, if somebody's really hurting, please don't do something that hurts you. But things like reaching up, if that's an okay thing to do, things like rotating, turning, if that's an okay thing to do. Can you get up and down off the floor without assistance? Um, Things like that need to become safely. So
Mm-hmm.
safety
Mm-hmm.
first, always. So if you
Mm-hmm.
can't get up and down without assistance, start with assistance.
Right. Right.
But those are things that I think we need to be practicing every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I
well,
think we need to be turning, reaching, getting up and down off the floor. You mentioned balance a little bit ago. Even if I haven't assessed your ankles and hips, there is nothing to stop you from trying to stand on one foot, just a little bit. How long can you stand on one foot? Time it, or count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and then try to break your record every day. So
okay.
I think there are so many little things that we no longer have to do every day, but if you can put them back into your day, and they probably won't total more than about 5 minutes, then that's a really good start
Okay.
to
Yeah. And
keeping
I
your body
think,
healthy.
I'm just thinking of myself, but I know that when I do movement, I get down on a mat and
Hmm.
I'm stretching and doing movement that mm, hurts just a little bit, but it's not excruciating, but I know, or I feel that I'm rotating and moving, that it's good. I'm moving stuff that needs to move. I'm not
Yeah,
going beyond where,
good.
I'm crying and got tears going down my face, but
Yep.
I know enough that this is today, especially with shoulders, as you mentioned, and I'm going to try to go a little bit further
Hmm.
tomorrow, and
Good.
see if I can reach all the way back and when I'm on my back and touch the floor with my fingers and so
Hmm.
forth. Um, so that's a piece for I think most seniors that I think they needed to hear. The next question I'd have for you is, what haven't I asked you that you want to say, but I just didn't cover it and didn't prepare well enough? What's the one thing that I missed asking you, Amanda?
Well, let me say, I think you prepared really well. I thought your questions were wonderful. I think the only thing that I want to add, and it comes from what you just mentioned, and this is a very deeply held belief of mine, is when you are starting to move in directions that you're not used to moving, or you're stretching something that needs to be stretched, be very careful to stay out of pain.
Right.
So, I think a lot of us kind of came up in the no pain, no gain era. And
That's right.
I have a fair number of clients that, I call them my gladiators, where they want to push, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they think if some is good, more is better. And
Right.
I am a big believer that that's not necessarily true. And my little mantra is strain begets strain, meaning if you are pushing through pain and you think you're doing something good, it's just going to hurt worse. Every time you do it, it's going to hurt worse. And
Yeah.
so, really, pushing to the point of pain or pushing to the point of strain is not a good way to go. And so, what I try to encourage folks to do, including you, is when you get to that range of motion where you're starting to feel something kind of complain, it's starting to go, oh, I don't like this, back
Uh-huh.
off.
Okay.
And then as you do the next repetition, stay just this side of that strain point. Because if you can go in a pain-free range of motion, like all the way to where it's just at the edge, and then you come back, eventually you will probably get more range because your nervous system no longer sees it as a threat.
Yeah.
And that's really important to remember. So remember, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the nervous system. So if we look at it from the standpoint of the muscle, you start thinking, okay, I'm going to push this muscle to stretch more because the next time I stretch it, maybe it'll go farther. But if you understand that the thing puppeting the muscle and telling the muscle how far it can go is your nervous system, and your nervous system is, oh gosh, yesterday Jim pushed me so hard it hurt, so I'm not going to give him as much range today. And so then he pushes again and it hurts again, and you're kind of fighting your body.
Uh-huh.
Whereas if you go to the point where you're just shy of that pain threshold and then you come back, that's more like reinforcing, hey, I'm not going to hurt you, body. I just want a little more range.
Mm-hmm.
And so then your body adapts to that bigger range of motion because it's like, oh, we can do this and it doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's a little bit of an oversimplification, but that is literally the difference between sort of focusing on the muscle and then focusing on the nervous system to help the body get better.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Staying out of that pain zone.
Yeah, I've all, when I was taught when I was young, played football, what do they have you do? They have you go until you throw up, right?
Yes.
You go
Yes.
beyond the pain level because that's the way it was. I don't know if it still is, but
It
50,
isn't, because there would be lawsuits.
yeah, 50 years ago, that's what they had us doing, and it was just
Yeah.
accepted practice. And in football, it was kind of man up, and I never manned up well enough, so I decided to play music instead. So there's never any pain in music. Maybe I caused pain to people listening, but there was no pain at all. So I could talk to you for so long, and I know you can benefit people so much with what you have to say, but I would just encourage people to go to your website because it's just an excellent website, and I think they can learn a lot in your website, and then reach out to you if they feel that you might be able to help them, and not be afraid to do that. Just reach out, and I'm guessing you don't mind a phone call for an assessment, or at least to let people
Absolutely.
know, right? And
Absolutely, yeah. So if there's a place on my website that says contact me, and I would encourage anybody who has some questions or wants a conversation, reach out to me on that form. We'll set up a call. I am more than happy to talk. I like to talk. Y'all can probably tell I like to talk. So I'm more than happy to talk and, sort of see what resources are available to you and how we might be able to help. So always happy to help.
This has been a joy, and I've really enjoyed talking to you. And hopefully we can talk again, and hopefully a lot of my listeners will reach out to you. And if they don't reach out to you, at least know that there are things that you can do to help yourself.
Absolutely.
And move forward. So, Amanda, I want to thank you. This has been great, and I've learned a lot. I think I'm going to start working on my ankles as soon as we hang up. All right.
Sounds good.
That's what I'm going to do. Hey, thank you so much, and
Thank you,
we'll talk again. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too.